Welcome, everyone, to the Judge Hubert Radio Hour on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at ArtistFirst.com. For about the past year, our host has been guest hosting on the G.L. Henderson Radio Hour. However, tonight it is my honor, pun intended, to introduce the host on this inaugural broadcast of his own new show. Here he is, judge and author, the Honorable Judge Hubert.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate you. And to all of our listeners out there in Radio Land, it's awesome opportunity to be able to kind of come and to spin off from the G.L. Henderson Hour. I actually want to thank G.L. because certainly would not have gotten this experience over the past year of being a guest host for him and his show. And I just want to thank him for that opportunity. And gosh, we had a lot of fun and looking forward to doing the same thing as we continue on. We were on the second Wednesday evening of each month on the G.L. Henderson Hour, but we're going to be starting that tonight, launching on March 1st. Talk about the Ides of March and the beginning of Women's History Month. We will be on the first Wednesday evening of each month at the same hour, at the 9 o'clock hour. And so we're going to be picking up where we left off. Those of you that like to go into the archive and see some of our past shows, those will be available on the landing page of the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Of course, along with things that we're doing, such as the 2 books that we've written. One, of course, which is How to Keep Your Child from Going to Jail. That was based upon a lot of my courtroom experiences. And the second one is called Perspectives. No one can take what you have between your ears. It really promotes the idea of what my dad used to tell me all the time. He said, boy, can nobody take what you got between your ears. So important that we learn and do things every day in every way. And you all know you always hear me say as my moniker, I like to quote Dr. Matt King Carter, always saying to us that never go to bed as ignorant as you were when you got up this morning. Every day you ought to learn something new. And so the focus of our show will certainly be on issues of law, justice, and education, doing our best to help make a difference in the lives of people. So, and tonight I am very, very, very honored, and as Scott said, no pun intended, but honored to have as my inaugural guest tonight on the Judge Hubert Radio Hour, none other than retired Chief Justice Peggy Quince of the Florida Supreme Court. And I see her, she was not only my boss, in terms of being the lead person for the court system of the state of Florida for several years, but also she's a dear friend. And we're just grateful that we're going to get a chance to pick her brain tonight and talk about a variety of different things in her life going on, and as well as comment on some of the social things that are going on around the world, and particularly in the state of Florida. We're both Floridians, and so that we have a front row seat to witnessing many of the things that are going on. Sometimes we kind of shake our head and wonder what in the world has happened in the last few years. But we're going to talk about a variety of different things here tonight. And so be sure to call your friends, let them know that they can listen in. If they go to the landing page for ArtistFirst Radio Network, ArtistFirst.com, they'll be able to see how to listen in to our show. And, of course, it will be recorded and made a part of the archive. So even if they miss it tonight, they'll be able to access it at any time here in the near future. Just before I bring her on, I want to do a shout-out to Miss Donna Gray Banks, because it was Donna who chairs and is the founder of the Fresh Book Festival. Donna was my guest last month on our show. And not only that, but just this past weekend, she hosted the 12th annual Fresh Book Festival, a phenomenal job. And it was only because of Donna that I was connected with GL, which ultimately brings me here tonight to this platform. And so the shout out to Ms. Donna Gray Banks, very successful program. She had over 50 authors present, and they did a phenomenal job promoting the whole entire idea that literacy is a legacy. So, Donna, again, thank you for all that you do and continue to promote the Fresh Book Festival. We're looking forward to year 13. And so, without any further ado, let me go ahead and introduce to you all our guest host, our guest for tonight, none other than the Honorable former Chief Justice of the Florida Supreme Court, Judge and Justice Peggy Quince. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Judge Hubert, and it is my pleasure to be here with you today and discuss whatever issues you think are important to the listeners here today.
Well, I want to thank you because you're taking some very special time out of your schedule, and I'm so happy that we were able to catch you back home because you have been having a phenomenal experience during your retirement. You have traveled quite extensively during this time period. Where are some of the places that you've been able to experience since leaving the bench?
I have really, you are correct. I have had a phenomenal time. And, one of the things on my bucket list is to see as much of the world as I can possibly see. I retired in January of 2019, January 7th to be exact. And on January 22nd, 15 days later, I got on a boat in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and traveled around the world 113 days.
Wow.
Then in January of 20, I went on another cruise that was a 71-day cruise that circumnavigated South America and Antarctica. I've been on 2 additional cruises since then. One was 35 days, which went to Iceland and Greenland and Norway and several other countries. And my most recent one was 71 days. We circumnavigated Africa. That was an outstanding experience for an African-American female who had before that time only been to Morocco and South Africa. I visited about 15 countries in Africa.
Wow.
So those are the big trips I've gone on.
Hey, those are phenomenal. I mean, you could almost add travel agent to your long resume because obviously you have experienced the world since leaving the bench. So again, congratulations on your retirement. And of course, you have always talked about travel, and you've always loved people and interface with people in so many different ways. So I'm gonna circle back around to some of your travels here as we talk about your life story, because I certainly want to sort of get the highlight of what you think was the real, should I call it, the best part of your experiences traveling the world, as you say, circumnavigating multiple continents here, no less. And so we're going to circle back to that. But let's give our listeners a little bit background and on who Peggy Quince is. I mean, I know you quite well, and in fact, I always deem it an honor just to be in your presence. But let's talk about your growing up and how you evolved to the point of being at the highest level of the court system here in the state of Florida. Let's talk about the young Peggy and how she got her start.
All right. It's very interesting that you should ask me about my growing up. And I want to give a shameless plug here. I wrote a chapter in a book called Her Honor, which is just now being released. And it is a story of I believe, about 21 female judges from around the country. Each of us wrote a chapter about our lives, how we grew up, and how we got to the point of being a judge. I grew up in a rural area of Virginia with a single parent, my father. And at that time, of course, it was very unusual for the father to raise the children. There were 5 of us. I was next to the oldest. My father, who was not an educated person, however, really drilled in the five of us the importance of education. That was our job, to go to school, to make good grades, and to go on from high school to college. That's the kind of atmosphere that I grew up in. Despite the fact that we were poor and my father was raising 5 children essentially alone, he wanted all of us to do the very best that we could, get an education, and not have to have minimum wage jobs like he did.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's interesting, Peggy, because you may have heard me say that my father taught me the subtitle of my second book, which was "No One Can Take What You Got Between Your Ears," and that was, my dad had a 6th grade education, but that was some phrase that he used to always talk about, and they pushed education in our family, and like so many others, because to quote another friend, that education is a key to being and staying free, and that's a great example of that based on your experience.
It is, and my father, I grew up, as I said, in the rural Virginia. When I was 6 years old, Brown versus Board of Education was decided. And my father thought that this was really going to make a substantial change in our schooling. Of course, Brown versus Board of Education was not implemented until
right.
I was a senior in high school. And so I never actually attended an integrated secondary school, because when I was a senior, I had a choice. That's what they called it, the freedom of choice plan in Virginia. You could either continue to attend the high school that you were in, or you could go to the closest high school to your home. And of course, the closest high school to my home was not the high school that I was attending. I would pass the white high school every day to get to the high school that I attended. Of course, as a senior, I decided that I would continue in the high school that I was in. My brother, however, who was just beginning high school, was one of the students that integrated the white high school. But my father was, I believe, very disappointed that Brown versus Board of Education was not immediately implemented, and that there was so much pushback and when the court made that decision.
Amazing. And and I know that this is something that we'll delve into even more, that there are people who still to this day don't really appreciate the depths of that Brown decision, and in fact, there are those who would wish that they could turn back the hands of time, and there's some that maybe even try attempting to do so. So, but we'll come back around to that. But that's a sad commentary on the fact that we've grown up learning in civics, which is another problem, because some years back they took civics out of the classroom, but we were taught about democracy and freedoms and those kinds of issues, but that seems to be something that has been lost in the generations that are now coming up. It's interesting that we talk about that, because following the decision that came out of the U.S. Supreme Court last summer that reversed the 50 years of judicial
Roe versus Wade.
Roe versus Wade, you know where I'm going with that. There was a comment made by Justice Thomas that maybe it was time to revisit some of the underlying reasons and rationale for, and of course he listed things such as that were decided based upon the liberty interest. And it seems to suggest that he might be inviting people to even question the original Brown versus Board of Education opinion.
Well,
so,
what is there to revisit? That's my question. The question is, in a country that calls itself a democracy, which I'm beginning to question now, in a country that's supposed to be a democracy, how can you and why would you revisit a system where you have people who are treated so unevenly, separate and unequal? There was never separate but equal. It was separate but unequal. Our teachers were paid less. Our children got the hand-me-down books. Our schools were never fully equipped like other schools. Separate and unequal. Why would you revisit a system like that?
Yeah. It makes you wonder and question what are the motivations behind it when you look and see that we felt as if, I think, and I may be speaking in a broad sense, that there are many people who felt as if, the progress we were making, that we would never ever consider going back into such horrible times. But the question becomes, if they could reverse 50 years of settled authority in Roe, can our U.S. Supreme Court now, of its own choosing, go back and look at other types of cases? For example, even things such as the Loving v. Virginia, which of course well settled the idea of interracial marriages. And what about things such as, it all started with the court taking a big lump, should I call it, out of the Voting Rights Act back in 2012, 2014. And yet we're still dealing with the after effects of these things. Yes, we're dealing with the after effects of those even right now. So it's a tough time that we're living in.
I don't understand the motivation at all. We're talking about black people right now, have never truly been treated equally. There's always been those things like redlining, which a lot of people think don't exist, but we still pay, get higher mortgage rates than others. We still live, for the most part, in segregated communities. Our schools are becoming more and more segregated. The issues are still here. And the motivation seems to be to take us back years. And it's very disturbing that there is such a large faction, it appears that there is such a large faction in this country that believes in that kind of principle.
And, it really is disappointing in so many ways to think that the level of progression that has taken place. And there may be those out there who believe that, with the election of Barack Obama, or with and then of course subsequent to that, the growth and development of many who are in various fields of corporate America, who are actually leading major corporations, or those who have now elevated. We see now we have a black female who is the vice president of the country. There are some people that are shaking in their boots because they seem to think that black folks might take over this country in some capacity. And I think the fear is that they might even believe that we would treat them like they treated us. I hate to say it, but that is something that I can't help but wrestle with that.
And it's something to wrestle with. But quite frankly, I think all of that is just an excuse to suppress. Mm-hmm. There is no way that 13% of the population, which is all that black people are in the United States, are going to take over from the majority. But it's not just black people. It is all people of color because, of course, the Hispanic population has increased tremendously in this country. So I really believe that it's any persons of color that we're going to take over and oppress what is now the white majority.
And, the irony of that is that demographers are saying that they're projecting. It used to be that by the time 2052, I believe it was the original number, that just based upon population trends, that we would see a situation where America will become a minority country. In other words, that whites, blacks, and Hispanic, in fact, the order would be whites, Latinos, blacks, and then other ethnic minorities, that we would be so, nobody would have 51% anymore. And so consequently, we would have to develop coalitions and learn how to get along with each other in the political sense. But the reality is that now the demographers are saying that's no longer going to be 2052. Many of them are now projecting that that could be as early as 2030. And so we are seeing some of the pushbacks and changes in the law, which seem to be designed specifically to maintain political control out of the hands of these other two quote-unquote minority groups, particularly blacks and Latinas, so that the whites can continue to maintain their quote-unquote majority status. Any thoughts about that?
Well, my thought is this. What's wrong with a coalition? What's wrong with compromise to get things done? But when you look at who controls the wealth in this country, it's a small percentage of people. And no matter what size the black population is, the Hispanic population, the Asian population, the Native American population, the wealth of this country reposes in a small percentage of white people.
Yeah.
And that has not changed and is not, I don't see it changing in the foreseeable future.
No, and neither do I. I was actually looking at a documentary just last evening that Professor Skip Gates was the lead commentator for, and I was amazed, or what should I say, to find out that back during the time of slavery, what was considered to be the wealthiest place in this country, believe it or not, was an area in Mississippi, and it was called I believe it was Natchez, Mississippi, which was a big surprise to me that would be deemed as such. But they talked about the fact that was because of the landowners, that was because of the slave owners, and that is certainly not the case today, but that was for many years, that was indeed the place that was considered as being the wealthiest place in America. And so you think about...
how did they build that wealth?
Through slavery.
Exactly.
It was done that way. Which kind of opens up another question for us, because, you and I also experienced something that within the last couple months, where here in Florida, our current governor made a decision to block. First of all, he blocked the discussions of critical race theory in the secondary school system. Ironically, those of us that are aware of what that's all about realize that was never being taught in high school, middle school, or elementary schools, but it became sort of a lightning rod that could be used politically to say that it was going to cause young white kids to dislike America. And now, secondly, it seems
to feel bad about themselves.
And feel bad about themselves, feel guilty. And that was far from the truth. But then he has recently, of course, and it's made national news, that he has promoted the idea of blocking, should I say he blocked, the implementation of the African American History AP, Advanced Placement course in high schools, because he actually said that history had no redeeming value. And I think that caused me to, and many people, to say, what the hell is he talking about? It has no redeeming value. But it seems like it's a trend that he's attacking these types of things, which in the past were never even considered that it was something wrong to teach Black history. And I still believe that Black history is an integral part of American history. But we got people that don't quite understand that.
And this country was built on the backs of slaves. Slavery is an intimate part of American history. And you know as well as I do, and you have heard as often as I have heard, that a people who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it.
Yes.
We need to, every American needs to know real history, not a whitewashed history, but what actually went on in this country. There is no doubt about it that people were forced, our ancestors were forced to come to this country in chains, bound to each other, little food, little water. The only option was death, which some people chose.
Right.
We got here and we worked this land with stripes on our backs and made this country helped. I will have to use the term helped make this country great. People need to know that. Every person needs to know that. And it was always sort of passed over in all of the history books. There was never any detail in it. But I think the more you understand it, the more you are aware of the fact that this is not what humanity is all about. And this is not something that we should encourage. I mean, it's unbelievable. We can't teach the Holocaust. We can't teach, what else are we going to take out of our history books? Can we not talk about the internment of the Japanese during World War II? Can we not teach about the Indian wars that went on in this country? It's a slippery slope to rewrite history. And it is very, very, in my mind, very dangerous. Banning books.
Banning books. I actually heard about the one up at Duval County School Board took a book off the shelf that was dealing with elementary kids that was talking about Roberto Clemente, the famous baseball player. And because there were statements in the book that talked about he overcame racism in order to become one of the greatest baseball players of all time. And for whatever reason, they felt like that phrase would make white kids, quote unquote, feel guilty. Can you believe that?
So we are not going to use the term race and racism?
That's what these people seem to be pushing for. And it's almost as if every day they come up, we're anticipating the upcoming legislative session that starts in a couple of weeks here in Florida. But they're talking in terms of introducing several bills that even take what has already been crazy and taking it and pushing it even further. Because it seems like now that the gates have been opened, you're getting people who want to almost like outdo the previous knucklehead that came up with. I mean, we saw recently that even with guns, as last week there was a tragedy here in the Orlando area involving the loss of life for 3 individuals, and 2 other people that were shot, but fortunately by God's grace, they survived. But now the legislature is talking about coming up with a plan to basically get rid of the requirements for concealed weapons.
permit.
So that you know, yeah.
So no longer would need a permit. So anybody could be walking down the street with a concealed weapon, and they get mad at you. I bump into you, and you don't like it. You can pull your weapon.
That's what it appears. And so it's all part of this. I don't know what this perception and these crazy politics are. And even with, I was a bit disappointed that even the work that we did with the court system, to see that now recently our Supreme Court has ruled that judges no longer have to take the class on fairness and diversity. And you and I both know that over the years that was something that we worked hard to put in place, because we had people that come from backgrounds that may not have had involvement or interactions with people of different colors or different languages or the like, or even people with different disabilities or the like. But as you quite well know, you all helped to put in place a process that will help judges to be exposed to how do you deal with people of various backgrounds, so that they're made to feel as if they have been treated and have received equal justice in the courtroom. But it seems like all of these things are trying to push together to say, okay, we no longer need diversity, we no longer need equity, we no longer need inclusion. And we're seeing this thing take off. Even today, I read an article, and I'd like for you to comment about that, down at New College in Sarasota, where the board just eliminated the same program, diversity, equity, and inclusion, against the wishes of literally the majority of the students at that school. And all of this seems to be a trend that they are saying, okay, we don't need that anymore. Everybody's the same. We don't need to teach anything about differentials in culture, class, language, etc.
Well, it really is a sad day for the people of this state when we have what I see as no checks and balances. With this country was founded on 3 branches of government. The executive, which in this state would be the governor, the legislative, which is our House of Representatives and our Senate, and then the judiciary, our court system. And each of them have a separate role. That's the check and the balance, when they have separate roles. But when you look at what's happening today, there are no separate roles. When the governor is proposing the legislation, you look at what happened with redistricting. Instead of the legislature doing redistricting, the governor did the redistricting and told the legislature, this is what you have to pass. And what did they do? They passed it. So we have gotten to a point in this country where what I'm seeing is not a democracy. It is not 3 co-equal but separate branches of government.
Well, God forbid if that becomes the same thing.
I personally am frightened.
Yes. I am too. But it seems as if we have a responsibility for people to not just, gripe, but to also be able to get out, register, and vote, which unfortunately seems to have been...
The problem is the people that we elect seem to have forgotten that lesson too. When they don't stand up and say, this is wrong, this is not how we operate. When they don't stand up and say, we legislate, you, the executive, you execute. what we legislate, and the court interprets it. When those branches merge, what do we have? Think about it. What do we have when we don't have the three separate co-equal branches?
Chaos. We have chaos is what we have. And it's obvious that seems to be the direction that our current leader wants to take us. Even with the situation with Disney, where he got upset with Disney because they came out in a press release where they did not approve of his, if you remember the Don't Say Gay bill a year ago. And he reacted to that by basically bringing the legislature on board and got them to repeal the special district that Disney and, in fact, several others had. And Disney's special taxing district went back to the early 60s, 1960s, but something that nobody ever thought would be repealed. But they finished it off this last week.
Who fought that?
Nobody did.
Who fought that? Not even Disney fought it, did they?
Yeah,
what did they do? They fired the person who made the statement. As I understand it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the person who made the statement about the legislation ended up being fired.
Yeah, and they went back and they brought back the previous CEO. Brought him back in and as in that position, and now I think as of I believe last week the governor appointed all new board members, and these are people that are not necessarily day to day. They certainly may not have day to day responsibilities. The question is, do they have a better understanding of how this Reedy Creek Improvement District should operate, as opposed to those people that the governor removed? It's kind of crazy. And we saw the same thing happen down at New College I mentioned a little bit ago. He fired all of the board members from there, and then those board members, he appointed all new board members, and the same day they appointed those new board members, they fired the president, and then they ended up hiring the former Secretary of Education, Cochran, and now he is the president, and in fact making twice as much as what the previous president was making. And their goal is to turn it into a conservative think tank. It's amazing what we're seeing happen.
And who is going to stop it? How do we address it? That's the real issue. How do we make sure that we get the state on track, that we continue to uphold and appreciate democratic principles? The right to vote, the right to peacefully protest. After the murder of George Floyd, what was one of the first things that our executive and legislative branch did? They did that HB1, which I call the anti-protest bill.
Right.
Making it more difficult and people facing criminal penalties if they get out and try to protest what's going on.
Yeah.
Then you got, after almost, in their terms, an almost perfect election in 2020, what do we get? Voter suppression bills in the next legislative session to make it even harder to vote.
It's
and it goes on, bill after bill after bill. And, no one seems to be able to stop it.
It can be a bit depressing.
There's no compromise whatsoever anymore. We don't have to compromise because we have a supermajority. That's the attitude. We don't even have to listen to you because we have a supermajority.
And you know, one of the sad parts
can come up and vote, and everyone can come up to the Capitol, speak in opposition to a bill. As soon as they finish speaking, the bill is passed.
Mm-hmm.
No consideration for all of those comments.
It's sad. It's a sad state of affairs. Now, for some people, they're cheering. And I've even heard of, I was talking to a friend of mine from up north who shared with me that she had met this guy who said, he was going to move to Florida because he likes what the governor's doing down here in Florida. And I told him, said, no, you tell him to stay right on up there. We got enough people who think like that. We don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
Well, let's circle around for a moment.
But they want this to happen all across the United States.
That's the scary part.
It's going to be a sad day.
You know, I even read recently of one of the congresswomen who was talking in terms of saying that we need a national divorce. The red states need to be able to divorce themselves from the blue states. And I thought about that. How do you get a national divorce? The only way you do that is some form of civil war. And God forbid that we find ourselves going back into something like that. Or even the fact that somebody would make such a statement, that is just, it's ignorant. It's downright ignorant. So, well, before we get depressed from all the things that we're talking about, let's talk for a moment about how your journey that got you to the Supreme Court, because some of our listeners out there are, I'm sure, will want to become a lawyer, will become a judge, become a justice, become even a chief justice. So for that little girl out there that might be listening, or her mom might be listening here on the beginning of Women's History Month, talk about your journey so that they in turn can recognize that if they can see you, if they can see it, they can be it. So talk a little bit about your life story in that respect.
Oh, okay. Well, as I said, my father was a big proponent of getting an education, but I also had a lot of teachers along the way. I may have gone to segregated schools, but I had some outstanding teachers, and these teachers tried to make sure that we lived up to our potential. They did not want to see you fail. So if I was talking too much in class and not getting my work done, they called my father. And that was the last thing in the world I want to happen, because my father truly believed in spare the rod and spoil the child. And so I had a parent who believed in me. I had teachers who believed in me. And quite frankly, there was a certain amount of competition with other students. So it made you put on your A game, as it were.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so I did my best in elementary and high school, and then, of course, won scholarships to go to college. And I won scholarships to go to a number of colleges and universities, but I chose to go to Howard University because it was the mecca, as it were, of black education. And I had always gone to segregated schools, and I was really just not ready to go to have a white experience yet. I think I was too young and too naive. I enjoyed my time at Howard. I did well at Howard, and then applied to law school. But I knew it was time for me to attend a more integrated setting. And so I attended essentially a white law school. That's what the legal profession was and still is today. And so in order to be able to navigate in that profession, I chose to go to a white law school. And during law school, I worked at the legal services, trying to get some practical experience about the law. You can have all the book learning in the world, but I wanted some practical experience also. And so I did that in law school, and then after law school, I married and moved to Florida and worked for a number of years with the Attorney General's office, where I had a real opportunity to immerse myself in the law, because when you are doing appeals, you have to have a clear understanding of the Constitution, both of the United States and the Constitution of Florida, and the statutes and laws that are applicable to whatever situation you're dealing with. And so I had a real opportunity to immerse myself in the law and to argue at the District Court of Appeals, the Florida Supreme Court, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals on the federal level, and even write briefs in the United States Supreme Court. And so those are the things that I did as a lawyer that I think prepared me to be a judge. And so after 13 years with the Attorney General's office, I was appointed by the late Governor Lorton Childs to the 2nd District Court of Appeal. And then 5 years after that, I was appointed by the late Governor Lorton Childs and then Governor-elect Jeb Bush to the Florida Supreme Court, where I served for 20 years, and a couple of those years as the Chief Justice.
And a phenomenal job that you did leading our court system. Talk for a moment about what that experience was like serving as the Chief Justice.
Well, the Chief Justice is really the chief of the court system, but not just the Florida Supreme Court, but all of the state courts. And so you are charged with making sure that those courts are running efficiently and effectively. I, of course, was the chief during the time of the Great Recession. And so we had a lot of financial issues to deal with. We had mortgage foreclosure issues to deal with. And so it was really a pretty intense time while I was the chief. But of course, I had the backing of the other members of the court and the other members at other levels of the court, because we all understood that we still needed to serve the people of the state of Florida. And no matter what resources were cut by the legislature, we had to roll up our sleeves and get the job done. And that's what we did.
All right. And again, I celebrate you because you were certainly, quote unquote, my boss during that time period. I know you don't like to use that term, but as head of the court system, you were indeed the one that led the entire judiciary. And of course, do you recall what the total number of judges were at that time? Were we around about 1,000 judges altogether? I can't remember off the top of my head. I know we had about 800.
I think we were 800 and some county court judges and close to 300 circuit court judges. I don't quote me on those numbers, but I think it was in that kind of range.
Yeah, so roughly about maybe 1,100 altogether, something about. And and of course, what you just said reminded me of the fact that that's about 1,100 egos as well, because everybody feels as if they, in particular as trial judges, we basically operate in our own courtroom, making our own decisions, and in a sense, we are that lead, that person within the four walls of that courtroom. And so whatever our ruling is, unless it gets appealed and gets reversed, typically it is it's the gospel. And but you not only had to deal with, keep helping us all to stay focused and to get the training and education that we needed to stay current, but also to be able to help those outliers realize that they were not untouchables. And so being the lead person on the court and handling and interfacing also with, as you mentioned earlier, with the legislature and with the governor, it was not a 9-to-5 job that you carried out, being the chief.
But I don't think any judge really has a 9-to-5 job. And I think for the most part, judges realize that they are the servants of the people. The courtroom does not belong to the judge. The judge may preside in the courtroom, but it is the people's court. Every courtroom in this state. And we are the servants of the people. We serve for them. We serve to make sure that their disputes are taken care of in a fair manner. Equal justice for all. That has always been what we should be doing, and for the most part, what we have done, at least in the past.
And, during your time, as I recall, because I got a chance to do some work at the National Judicial College, you were also involved with a number of national judicial organizations. But Florida ranked very high in terms of in the top 5. I think some places they called it our court system in the top 3 court systems in the country at that time. And I just pray that we don't lose that standing by some of the decisions that seem to be moving along right at this point in time. In your absence and in your retirement.
That's one of the issues that I'm going to take the fifth on.
That's all right. We can still celebrate you. We celebrate you because we know the work that you did. I know that our time is starting to wrap up here tonight, so I want to circle back around to those that might have been heard us at the beginning talk about some of your retirement travels. What would you say that out of all of those various ports of call that you got a chance to visit, talk about some of the highlights of those and maybe throw out there to some of the people there, some of the places that maybe encourage them to even visit.
Hubert, I want to make this one statement before I answer that, and that is that all of the countries that I have visited, and I think when I counted them last, it was maybe 90 countries.
Wow.
I found that there is sort of a central theme that people hold dear. And all people want a good life. They want a good life for their children, for themselves and for their children. They want to be able to educate their children. They want to, we all want the same things in life, no matter what your ethnic background is, your racial background, your religious background. Those are the central things that I found that all people really want. And we don't want it to be, and people don't want things to be given to them. They want to have an opportunity to do those things. And I think that's one of the problems we have in this country is people think we want a handout. We don't want a handout. We just don't want anyone's knee on our neck. We want to be able to do those things that are going to be helpful to our families and make our lives and our children's lives prosper. And that's what I found wherever I went in the world. But there are some places that I really enjoyed, and several of them are African countries, Senegal and Ghana. I really have enjoyed Singapore and India. And in fact, I am going this October back to Ghana for about 10 days. We have a young man who is from Ghana who is going to take a group of about 10 of us on a pilgrimage through Ghana. So I'm looking forward to that. And then in 2024, I am going to go on another world cruise and visit another 20 or so countries.
All right. Wow. And you're, like I say, you have earned it. You more than deserve it. And I am just one of your biggest cheerleaders as it relates to the world travels.
All life began in Africa. I think anyone who goes to Africa would really enjoy it, but especially African Americans. If you have an opportunity, you should visit some place in Africa.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm going to put that on my bucket list. In fact, who knows? Maybe I'll be signing up for one of your to hang out with you on one of your excursions.
You should come on that cruise in 24. You don't have to take the whole thing. It's 128 days.
Wow.
You don't have to. You can do segments of it. So you and Daisy should look into it.
You know what? Maybe we'll
information.
All right. Maybe we'll put that on our bucket list and see if we can't make that happen then. Hanging out with our dear friend. Well, certainly it's been a pleasure having you with us tonight and just sharing your heart on so many different subjects. Any final comments that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up for tonight?
I would just like to tell people that they need to stay woke. That you need to make sure that you understand history, that you understand what's going on in this country right now, and do what you can to try to keep this country a democracy.
Amen. Powerful words and powerful charge to each of us. In fact, I'm always reminded of something that I believe Joe Madison says, and he asked the question, what are you going to do about it? And so to our listeners out there, all of us have a role to play. And let us not stick our head in the sand like the ostrich does, because when we do so, that leaves another part of our body exposed. And I know that it's so important that, as we say, that we're the ones that call upon to make a difference, not just for ourselves, but for our children, grandchildren, and those that follow. So, again, I want to thank you for being our guest tonight. You have certainly stirred up a lot of interest, certainly in me. I know we're going to hear that from many of our listening audience out there. And so whether you decided your young daughter wants to rise up through the ranks, become a lawyer, become a judge one day, possibly even a justice, whether it is that they want to operate a tour company and travel the world, you have heard it here tonight, all in the package of none other than our dear friend, retired Chief Justice Peggy Quince. And so with that being said, we'll end the show with the same way we started. Never go to bed as ignorant as you were when you got up this morning. Every day, you ought to learn something new. I hope that you learned something new tonight from our podcast. God bless you all, and we'll say good night.
Good night.